listener, tell me, do you like scary movies? Because we here on the Two Nerds podcast love scary movies. I am, of course, Eric J. Chucky. This is my partner in crime, the boy.
Hey.
And we're doing something for the holiday, as we have been doing. Before we get into that, let's run down the usual. Like, comment, favorite, subscribe, share, circulate the links. Head on over to Super Blizzard Shining Was Auto Funtown, link in the description. Buy up a bunch of music. He does our theme song, Let's Get Hardcore. And buy my books. I don't know. I never say that. It seems kind of tacky, but fucking do it.
I have a story to tell you about that after the podcast.
Ooh, something you don't get to find out about, listener.
So, we mentioned that we're going to be doing a bunch of different podcasts throughout the month of October for Halloween and the surrounding sort of fun time. We thought today would be a great time to do our top 10 favorite horror movies. With a couple caveats. This is not a list of what we think is the best horror movies of all time.
Yeah, not like unequivocally best. I mean, there are personal favorites.
But if I were making a list of the best horror movies of all time, my list would be very different. And probably made up of a few movies I'm not all that fond of, to be honest. And the other is the same thing we always have when Two Nerds do a top list. It's always going to be at this time. Opinions change. We watch new movies. We rewatch old movies and find out they don't hold up as well as they used to. Stuff changes. But as of this day, stardate 2014. What's today's date?
Today is the 19th. It'll be the 20th by the time the listener is listening.
Then I'll make a bet by October 20th, 2014, this will still be our opinions.
Another caveat, if there's a movie that's on our actual top 10 favorite movies of all time, I left it out of my list. I think you did too. Yeah.
Same.
We plan on doing a revisitation to that. Those of you who are long-time fans may have seen our video on Blip or YouTube.
Before
I don't know if
YouTube took it down.
Yeah. I broke some copyrights. That's okay, though. It wasn't a very good video, but I put a lot of heart into it, and it was myself, the boy, and Brandy discussing our top 20 favorite movies of all time at that point in time. We'd like to revisit that with a fresh list.
Yeah, cut it down to top 10.
Yeah, because
20's a little long.
Yeah, it went on a little long. But, I think it'd be a lot of fun. There have been some changes there, and I'm sure you guys would like to know, because once we're done with this list, I know there are movies that if you people know me, and I know some of you out there do, you're going to be going, where is X? Where is Y? You love those movies. That's because they're on the other list.
Another caveat is we're trying to loop the third nerd in for the revisit too. So the top 10 movies list is on hold for now, pending Brandy being able to join us. We might go ahead, but we'd much rather prefer to have...
I'm sure we can find her. It's not going to be a problem. It's just a matter of actually sitting down and doing scheduling. I have been under the gun and working really hard on leveling WoW characters this past week, so I didn't have time to sit down and nail some things out.
Very important, you have to understand.
But my personal list, again, before we get started, is... I tried to stick away from something that I thought was too far on the comedy side of the horror comedy slant.
I did too. I also tried to stick as far away from stuff that doesn't feel like a horror movie. Let me explain. We talked about this in What Makes a Horror Movie, but like 2 of you watched that. So,
hey, that number's climbing up. It's up to 3, I think, now.
Whoa. So I'm going to do a very brief version. Don't turn off the podcast. Slasher movies feel different than horror movies, but so long as it still has the horror feel, so long as don't spend the majority of the movie going, yeah, get him, then I think it's fine to be honest.
So long as you're not just rooting for the killer
100%.
100%. I mean, if you're a sociopath and that's what you feel like doing, that's fine. But they have to be like lovable characters. It can't be. You're talking more about the original Halloween is a good example, but like some D-list slasher.
Friday the 13th, part like 5.
Yeah, where you just want to see shit get killed.
The fourth, A Dream Child, Nightmare on Elm Street movie. By that point, you're rooting for Freddy, and that's a problem.
With the movie, not with you. You root for whoever you want to, listener. We enable the sociopathically psychopathic, so long as you keep those knives away from our loved ones, okay?
Yeah, you do whatever you want. Away from me.
Now, one more thing before we get started, and I feel...
Just piling caveats on.
No, actually, this isn't a caveat. This is something I wanted to discuss. I don't even remember if we talked about it in our top 20 movies video, the original one, which was a video. You saw our gorgeous faces in it. If you can track it down, I apologize for the shitty editing, but it's a fun 3 hours.
Yeah, like we said, 20. Runs a little long.
Our top 10 movies of all time is of any genre. Any movie you feel is in the top 10. But when we made the list, we noticed that largely 2 genres kind of weren't there. And that was horror movies and comedies.
And we discussed it for a while, and we found out that the both of us, completely separate, judge horror movies and comedies on different scales from other movies. I judge comedy movies differently than I judge action or drama or suspense movies, and I judge horror movies differently than I judge any of those.
Now, that's not a hard line. There's a lot of funny stuff in a lot of the movies in both of my top 10 lists. And we'll probably be doing a comedy list at some point in the near future.
Oh, no, that one's hard, man.
That is hard, but come on, for the listener. For Ultimo Dragon. You know all those belts he had.
He did have so many.
He worked really hard.
He worked very hard.
We need to work at least that hard to making a list of movies be like.
I'm pretty sure he worked hard.
All right, well, let's get started. Let's get started with The Boy. I'm usually the big dick who goes first. Why don't you kick this off?
I actually think it's pretty appropriate I go first.
Coming in at number 10.
At number 10 on my list of my favorite horror movies of all time is Scream.
Eek!
You're a douche.
I'm in a douchey mood, I'm sorry.
You really are. But I'm going to try and avoid saying this, listener, because you can assume it's true of all the movies on this list. I'm going to say it once to cover all these movies. I love this movie.
Right.
I like it because of how, not revolutionary it was, but how reinvigorating it was. The slasher genre, as, everyone and their mother will tell you, wasn't exactly, it wasn't dead, but it was on life support.
It had mutated. And this is precisely what we were talking about not 2 minutes ago. It went from being something where you cared about the characters and there was a real feeling of tension to being like a precursor to Gorn, where you went in expecting to see Captain Kirk. Wait, no, wrong Gorn. Where you went in expecting to see people dying horribly, and cheering for that, not going in to see, peril and terror. And yeah, Scream really did revitalize that feeling of peril and terror for the main characters.
And it did it in a way that I found really spoke to me when it came out. I was pretty young when it came out. You can do the math yourself, listener, because I don't feel like it at the moment. But it felt a lot more connected to people I knew, people I'd heard speak, people I had hung around with, than the slasher movies I had seen before, than the horror movies I'd seen before, because most of them were from the early to mid-'80s. And while I was technically born in the 80s, I was born in 1989, so I don't know if it counts.
Yeah,
it was an update and a revitalization of a genre I have come to love deeply. And it kind of was the movie that got me into slasher movies. It got me into, not horror movies, I've been watching horror movies since I was a wee lad, but specifically serial killer movies, that sort of thing. Guy with knife chases young girl. Scream was not the first one I'd seen, but the one that really made me love them.
That's cool. Plus, if you listen to the Scooby-Doo podcast, we all know about the boys' screaming fondness for Matthew Lillard.
I love Matthew Lillard. I love Matthew Lillard and everything he's in.
Which I share. I mean, I watched some dumbass baseball movie years ago because he was in it.
It's just, he's good. He's a good actor.
He's fun, too. And he's a real peach.
And
fucking SLC punk.
This is a spoiler for those of you who know Matthew Lillard's career, but I feel like you deserve it. It's not the only time he appears on this list.
Dun dun dun.
But on that note, you go ahead.
Yeah, let's come in at my number 10 slot. You went with the new classical.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the classical. Number 10 is The Exorcist, specifically the director's cut, which I believe was released around the late 90s.
I forget, but yeah, somewhere in there.
Or maybe it was re-released. I don't know, remastered probably.
That is in my top 20.
And this is something I discussed when we talked about the What Makes a Scary Movie Scary podcast, is subtlety. You know, in the director's cut, there was so much more weird shit going on in your periphery. And if you look at it right now, compared to the effects we see, even compared to the master strokes in other movies since then, it's a bit silly.
But for its time, it was not just revolutionary, but apparently too scary.
Oh, it scared the shit out of me. And, I mean, I was into horror movies.
But, no, this is not. You're not an isolated phenomenon.
Yeah.
The Exorcist scared the bejesus out of people when it came out.
Oh, and here's a fun story, okay? I don't remember if we talked about this on the podcast, but Internet Screamers, did we discuss that at all?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. The first one that ever got me, the picture they used to scare the shit out of you was Pazuzu's face.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I didn't know that until I was watching the fucking director's cut and that shit kept flashing on the screen. So, not only was it actually scary, but it was calling back to something that had already startled me.
So it was like, it dug into a primal reaction. That's nice.
Yeah,
that's an unexpected bonus.
I don't know if I could ever recreate something like that. And honestly, in terms of plot and storytelling, I would probably pick Exorcist 3 as the superior Exorcist movie. Because that movie is underrated as hell. But
I don't think I've ever actually seen it. I've seen reviews of it.
We might have it.
I don't watch it.
If not, I'm sure
I
we'll
haven't
check
watched
it out.
enough horror movies this October.
Yeah, we'll fix that, I have no doubt. But yeah, the director's cut of The Exorcist, it is a little longer, but I think it's worth watching. Watching it?
Worth watching.
Exorcist of the watching. I was thinking about Exorcist at the beginning.
Yeah, it's worth watching. We're keeping that.
All right, yeah, we're in.
Going hard on the worth watching.
Let's roll on to number 9.
Number 9 on my list is actually, unabashedly, unapologetically, it's Gorn. It full on is. It's Hostel. I love Hostel. It is... The first half of that movie is a great, scary town movie.
Yeah, like the original Wicker Man.
Yeah, it is a great putting fish out of water characters into this place they're not familiar with and making it very much seem threatening, but for unknown reasons. I love that. Then it switches to Gorn, to torture porn. It's glorious. As far as I'm concerned, it's the epitome of the genre. It's
the trope namer as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, it was a calling card. It was a clarion call for a wave of imitators that I'm pretty fond of as a whole, so long as they're good for other reasons too. For instance, Hostel has characters I like, has villains who, while not relatable, let's say, they're fun, honestly, and it has situations that are inventive, which is important for Gorn. You need inventive situations.
That's why the Saw series works so well, is because those traps are just so inventive.
It's not exactly scary, but it has... Unless you're someone who's planning on going to Europe, then I'm sure it's terrifying.
Yeah, no, there were a lot of college trips canceled that year.
But it undercuts a lot of stuff about traveling that scares people, and I like that. I never found it scary because I'm a homebody and I don't go anywhere, listener. But
well, and I believe it was said at the time, this movie did for European vacations what Jaws did for the beach.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah,
that's accurate because it put the thought into your mind.
It
drilled into your brain? There's every chance there's some sort of weird torture dungeon you're gonna get nabbed and put into.
What I like that it did, and if you're a hardcore cynic, you're gonna hear me say this and be like, not me. It took characters that were kind of unlikable douches and made you care.
Yeah.
It humanized them.
Not all of them.
Not all of them, but it reminded you that yes, even the shitty people in slasher movies are people when it comes down to it. And that's nice. That breathes of effort and good storytelling.
It breathes of the sort of effort and good storytelling that Hostel 2 kind of lacked.
Hostel 2 reminded me of a really slow, like, weird version of Subspecies. Subspecies is a series of vampire movies, with one of my favorite movie vampires of all time, Radu. The first of which is basically the same as the plot of Hostel 2.
Oh.
Except instead of, murder, stab people, it's a vampire.
So it eat.
Yeah. But, or maybe that was Subspecies 2. Regardless.
Who cares?
You should check it out. It's fun, dumb B-movie horror crap. I will roll right along to number 9 on my list, which is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. The one in the 2000s? I don't have the exact date on it.
I do. Hold on. It's somewhere on this list. Not on mine. No, you know what? It's not. It didn't. Oh, yeah, it was 2003.
2003.
It was number 13, if anyone's interested. Didn't quite make the cut.
This movie took everything that was good and scary about the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre at the time and updated it for a modern audience. They kept all the things that were important about the characters there and added, what modern audiences would find compelling. Did it scare the shit out of me? No, not really. But I thought it was a great presentation. Arlie Ermey was fantastic, as he is in anything he does.
There is exactly one movie on this list that scared the shit out of me.
Right on. I can't wait till we get to that. And the atmosphere in the movie was really good. The sets, the clothes, the period setting was all just really well done. It really sucked you into it,
Yeah, I do know.
I was fortunate enough to see it in the theaters. I had a couple jump scares during it. It was nice. I think it was when Leatherface burst out from behind the wall to get her, like near the end after the scene in the meat room. Oh man, that was cool. Scene. And all the claustrophobia, and you're just like, oh my god, I can just imagine myself in there. The theater was so cold.
That movie had good tension.
It did. It created amazing tension, and that's why among the great performances in there as well, it's number 9 on my list.
Rolling right along, listener. It's number 8 on my list. I was going to do a big lead up, but no, I'd rather talk about the movie. American Psycho. I like American Psycho because American Psycho might not be a horror movie. And I've always loved that. I love that there's every possibility that this is all in Patrick Bateman's head.
That's a big reason. And let me check my honorable mentions here. We do have honorable mentions, listener. No, it's not on my list at all, because I don't necessarily think of that as a horror movie.
I do, because that's what it presents itself as.
Yeah, sure. I can't discredit that at all, but
to me, it is the second most interesting character piece in my list. It's a great horror movie because it plays with your expectations. because it has these scenes of horrific violence, but it also has these really funny moments.
Yeah.
And these really oddly disturbing but not violent moments. For someone who deals with obsessive people a lot in their lives, or deals with someone who gets really intense about odd things, like I do, it must be so unnerving to watch the intensity with which Patrick Bateman scrutinizes a business card. I've heard people talk about how Christian Bale disturbed them more in that movie when he was staring at himself in the mirror than when he was chopping up hookers. And I think that's important, because even if all of the murder and terrible violence and him shoving cats into ATMs is in his head, even if it's all in his head, he's still a disturbed individual. And Christian Bale pulls that off so well.
Yeah, it is a fantastic performance. Just a phenomenal piece of movie. I rank it up there in terms of just must-see flicks. Right up there with American Beauty. And I know American Beauty can be kind of pretentious
American Beauty is super pretentious, sir.
From the outside viewpoint. And there's a lot of pretension in it, but it's usually people focusing on like 2 or 3 scenes that really have so fucking little to do with the overall narrative of the story.
I am mostly lady with boob roses.
And the bag.
The plastic bag douchebag.
That's the thing everybody remembers. That this is a movie about Kevin Spacey being Kevin Spacey sad face.
The plastic douchebag.
The plastic douchebag. It's like, okay, American Psycho. You look at this movie, and what are the scenes people usually talk about? The business card?
The business card. If they're a lady, usually you hear something about the push-ups.
And the Huey Lewis in the News scene.
Oh, which is just it's the best scene in that movie.
But
I'm not gonna lie.
That doesn't begin to dip into the horror of this movie, the psychological depths and levels. I mean, when I think about this movie, when I'm reminded of it, what sticks out in my head the most is the last scene when he's alone in the apartment on the phone with his attorney, and the scene in the bathroom where they're doing cocaine. Like, for me, those are the hallmarks.
For me, the hallmarks of that movie are the first sequence, because it sets the tone.
That's true. That's so good.
For the whole movie, and then the nightclub scene. Just because of the line, mergers and acquisitions is what the guy hears. Murders and decapitations, I think? I'll have to look it up, because it's been too long since I've seen the movie.
That's good. That's fun. Fantastic movie. Good spot on your list, too, I think. I'm going to go to my number 8. Another remake. This one is The Hills Have Eyes. People give this a lot of flack for going more... I find this kind of ironic. A lot of people bitch about movies being darker and edgier in general. This adaptation of a movie, darker and edgier. This adaptation of this movie, darker and edgier. Why can't we have...
It's called the gritty reboot.
Yeah, the gritty reboot. The Hills Have Eyes remake was a gritty reboot. I mean, they went to dark fucking places. And if you are sensitive toward that kind of thing, man, I can fucking understand. It's dark fucking shit. That's why I enjoy it as a horror movie. Because it, as a film, is not afraid to psychologically take you to these horrible places and make you feel for these characters.
And I don't have any problem with gritty reboots of horror movies, because that's what horror movies are for.
My exact point. That's what it's there for. Now, what most people remember, and the most controversial part of this movie, is the rape scene. Which they don't show anything real nasty or anything like that, but it's
more tasteful than the original I Spit on Your Grave.
Well, shit, I crap stuff out more tasteful than the original I Spit on Your Grave.
But nobody gives shit to that movie.
Yeah, because it was a long time ago. People like to bitch about what's going on right now. Anyway, not that this movie is recent, but not only is the acting good, and I need the acting to be good in my horror movie. If I don't believe you, you go into The Camp Zone, and where I still love it.
but it doesn't count.
Yeah, but not my favorites. That's ironic sort of stuff. I can't remember his name for the life of me. Buffalo Bill.
Yeah, you're only going to get Buffalo Bill from me.
The guy from Monk. Not
the guy from Monk?
Yeah.
No, oh, that's right, he was.
Yeah, he was his boss.
When I used to watch Monk, I would totally forget that was Buffalo Bill. And then every now and again I would be reminded, and I would go, ah!
His performance was phenomenal. That scene where they set him on fire, it's just amazing. I mean, and then the douchey son-in-law guy, everything he goes through is astounding. The story that's told, the journey you go through. And again, just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, these movies are so close to each other on the list for the similar reasons. They create such great atmosphere. They've got such great actors, such great character actors. They tell a good story. They tell a better version of the original story. It's still got all the good points that made the original story great, but it's modernized, it's updated, it uses current effects, current standards.
Ted Levine.
I love Ted Levine. And he's fantastic.
No one ever has to be dumb again. The internet exists.
Yes, he's got his cell phone. I don't feel like tippity-tap-tap typing on the keyboard. Phenomenal. Overall phenomenal. When he goes through the caves and goes into the mutant town, and I have cribbed so much from that for my work. I mean, you file off the serial numbers to help the innocent, but you take inspiration where you can. I mean, and this inspired me so much. I gotta give it props, and number 8's pretty good props. Let's roll on to number 7.
Number 7, for me, is not a remake. Number 7 is actually probably one of the most, and this is gonna sound like, I don't know, undue compliments, but I think it's honestly true. One of the most original movies I've seen, and one of the most unapologetic movies I've seen, at least in the last few years. It's Red State. Red State is from Kevin Smith. Yeah, the guy who did Clerks. And it is an unapologetic, uncompromising movie. It is bleak, it is dark, and it is, but for a few very funny jokes that snuck in under the wire, almost completely joyless. And I love it because it is so stark, and because of the performance of Michael Parks. Michael Parks is fucking amazing in that movie.
I would agree.
Michael Parks has a line in that movie. It's a lead up. The line essentially boils down to, "You better believe I fear God." And that was one of the few times in my movie watching history that a line felt so genuine that it sucked me completely into the movie. I was bought in for those 4 or 5 seconds, and that's really hard to do. And he plays this character. He plays the pastor of this militant, scary cult church. And he does it with... It sounds really pretentious, but he does it with grace. And he does it with a very firm hand. And I know it was all Michael Parks. Kevin Smith is very honest about that. He just sort of handed him the script and watched him go.
Well, that actor does that, you know.
And he's so good in that movie. And honestly, I love that Dan Connor is in it. I do. I love everyone in that movie. They put in great performances there. You can tell they're having a good time, even though the movie isn't really a good time. But Michael Parks makes that movie. That movie is built on that man's back, and he delivers in a big bad way. I don't really have much to say about it other than that, because there isn't really much to say aside from a plot synopsis, and you can get that off IMDb if you're super interested. But aside from Michael Parks, I mentioned that it's very stark, very unapologetic. its ending is pretty bleak. So, I mean, go in prepared for that.
Well, I think a good horror movie, can afford to have a bleak ending. We're so used to the ending sting, the end question mark, and there's a place for that. But an ending that just sort of says everything turned out sort of shit.
Deal with that.
That's the kind of thing that leaves you with that lasting horror. And I agree with a lot of your words, your mouth words.
Oh, good.
What do we got, number 7?
Yeah, that was my number 7.
My number 7 is another remake. But this one most people don't really count as a remake. Cronenberg's The Fly.
Yeah, most people say that's The Fly. The other one was like the
precursor.
It had the test treatment.
And to take nothing away from the original horror, it's just updated. Where to begin? Amazing graphic effects.
Yeah, some of the best practical effects that you're likely to see.
Like Cronenberg.
Yeah.
Period. Jeff Goldblum.
Who is at his Goldblumiest.
Gina Davis, one of my favorite actresses of all time. In a fantastic performance. Yeah, I love Gina Davis.
Huh. I can always take or leave her.
Well, that's fine. I will take her.
It's just very surprising.
Yeah, I like her.
I did not know anyone was that passionate about Gina Davis.
You know what? Every movie I've ever seen Gina Davis in, I have at least liked her role. So...
Fair. That's high praise.
The plot is great. The acting is great. There's so much emotion and so much investment. It's really it's fun how his role in Jurassic Park, that is to say, Jeff Goldblum's role in Jurassic Park, so closely mimics the audience's role in The Fly.
You're right. I never thought about that. But
yeah, and it's a great movie.
You got so caught up with whether or not you could that you didn't stop to think about whether you should.
Yeah. And Inside Out Baboon will continue to haunt me. I was young when I saw that the first time. But that's it for my number 7. I'm going to flip the script just a little bit.
Okay.
Because my number 6 is also Red State. So I'm just going to embellish everything you just said. Yes, 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 and yes. I think the best part about that performance is that he is being believable as this person. As this super evil Fred Phelps.
More evil than regular Fred Phelps.
I don't want to talk too much about what happens through the course of the movie because it's recent enough that I don't think the statute of limitations on spoilers
on Netflix.
It is, and you should go watch it, listener. When you're done with this podcast...
You know what? This is going to be... We said it's a good movie, go watch it a lot during the original Top 20 Movies thing, and we're both trying to avoid saying that.
Right.
Despite how much we love these movies. You notice on the Two Nerds podcast, when we like something, we tend to pimp it. A lot. To the point of being almost annoying about it. We're trying to avoid that for this, but just blanket statement. All these movies, unless we say differently, go watch them.
Well, you know what? Honestly, looking at my entire list, except maybe the number 1 spot, Red State is the only one I would unequivocally recommend to anybody who isn't offended by the idea of the villain being super evil Fred Phelps.
I would recommend it to those people too, but mostly because
they need a wake-up call, really.
Mostly because I'm not all that fond of those people.
Right. But, his performance is just... there's a quote. We do that thing on Facebook we talked about before where we keep track of our movies.
Yeah.
That's how it's so easy to make these lists.
The "You better believe I fear God" is the quote on my Facebook for this movie.
No, actually.
It's not?
No.
Mine?
It was Popeye.
Really?
I'm almost positive. There's just really... You know what? It might not have been. But that was a strong contender when we were discussing it. There's this really genuine moment where a little kid is like being all big, strong guy at him, and he has this sort of grandpa mystique. And he's like, "Oh, Popeye," you know, like he's playing around with him, and that
show me if it's
he's being a sweet old man, and that's where this horror creeps into the back of your head.
Because it makes him believable.
It makes him believable, and the next time you're at the fucking supermarket and you accidentally bump into some sweet old man, he's like, it's all right, Sonny. You didn't bruise me. You're not that strong. It's okay. I'm not that dead yet." And you have a laugh, and you go, "Oh my God, what if that guy is that guy? Oh shit, my whole world is ruined." Rich, believable characters. Strong performances. That is really what helps horror get sold. Not just atmosphere, not just a good, scary idea in the first place.
Yeah, I checked my Facebook because I had to know.
Yeah.
It was the line I thought.
Yeah,
but he's right. The second choice would have been that line because it's so...
It's that nugget. It's that little hook of this character is real.
This could totally be happening.
What I like to compare this movie to in my head is I have a lot of vibes of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Not just because of John Goodman, because John Goodman's role in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou was so minor.
Great, but minor.
But also just the general bleakness.
It's the hopelessness that, while it's a sort of tongue-in-cheek, we know this is all going to end poorly, but my God, it's going to be a fun ride that Oh Brother, Where Art Thou has. Red State doesn't have the second part.
No.
This is going to end horribly.
Yeah, and it's got that same sort of bleak outlook that a lot of my favorite horror movies have, that you're just like, how can this get worse? And then it gets worse. And you're like, how can they make this better? They take you to the end, and they only drag you so far back. And I appreciate that.
They leave you a little bit worse off than you started. And for sometimes in a horror movie, that's what you want.
So let's slide back to your number 6.
My number 6. There's a theme here with at least, I'd say, one exception. And I'll get to that. But I tend to like character study movies. Especially in horror, because it allows me to connect more. It keeps me from rooting for the villains, because oftentimes they're the more entertaining character.
That's true.
This is a very similar movie, in that it's mostly a one-man show. It is a man versus a hotel room, and doesn't that sound like a boring premise? 1408.
Really?
I am a huge fan of Stephen King. I've read all the books he has written up until Under the Dome. I'm catching up from there. And 1408, notable in that it doesn't have Stephen King's name attached. Stephen King, from what I understand, loves the movie, just thinks it's different enough from his original story that, much like The Shining, he thinks it's a great movie. He just doesn't want that version to be the version with his name on it, because he'd like to make a version with his name on it that's more true to the original story. At least I think so. I know that's the case for The Shining. I'm not sure about 1408.
I would not recommend casting Steven Weber in the Stephen King 1408. He's a good actor and I like him and everything, but
1408 has a very unique distinction. I'm about to commit horror movie blasphemy.
Uh-oh.
I am not a huge fan of The Shining. The movie, I like it. It's a great movie. I recognize that. But it's so different from a book that I read and love that I can't get into the movie all the way. I can't fully buy in. Because there's the nerdy, niggling part in the back of my brain that goes, that's different, that's different, that's different, that's different. That's Stanley Kubrick making a very intentional jab at the book. That's different.
It's nerd versus buff, and nerd wins.
Yeah. I can't go, that's different, but I also enjoy this. It's that different, why did you make that different? And that's a bad thing on my part. I'm not proud of that. It's just true. I can't buy into The Shining all the way because I like the book. 1408 is a very short story. 1408 is literally a short story. It's in a collection of short stories. Several, I think, at this point. I like the movie 1408 more than I like that short story. The short story is very in keeping with the rest of King's mythos. It feels like a Stephen King story. It works like a Stephen King story. I like the movie better. I think the movie did a better version of a man versus an evil hotel room. Sometimes when I say his shit out loud, it sounds like he's doing man versus evil desk lamp. It's just, and that premise, when you just say it straight out, man versus evil hotel room, sounds fucking ridiculous. But once you get into the story, it buys you in with great performances and great effects, obviously, and great character building for the hotel room, oddly enough.
Yeah, that is kind of strange.
The best built character in that movie is the hotel room. And it builds on a paranoia. This might be me personally. In the original short story, now the short story is older than the movie, so I'm okay to spoil it. The room itself is sort of a portal to an eldritch dimension. It's not of this earth, so everything's sort of wrong and off kilter and starts to try and devour you, essentially. It drives you mad, because looking upon things that you are not meant to see drives you mad. That's just mythos. 1408, the movie, that version of the hotel room, is not quite the same thing. It sells this room itself as malevolent, not haunted, evil. I like that, because it draws upon a paranoia that I have of hotel rooms. I'm not a big fan of hotel rooms, because one never knows what has happened previously in them. This movie sells you on that concept, that you never quite know what you're walking into when you walk in to a place where people have spent sometimes very traumatic, emotional parts of their lives. You never quite know what you're in for. And it does its best to sell you on the fantastic premise that every now and again, you might buy a lot more than you can chew when you take that key. And not to mention the performance. John Cusack is phenomenal.
Yeah, when is he not?
I think I saw a movie where he was shitty once, but he seems like he wasn't really into the movie, but I don't remember what it was, so I might have been dreaming. That's right, Internet, I dream of John Cusack. Or do with that what you will.
Who doesn't?
Now to get us back on track.
Wait, are we talking about man crushes? Because I want to go back to Jeff Goldblum.
The best way to get us back on track would be if I did number 5, or do you just want to go back and forth?
Go ahead and take over number 5. I'm going to go ahead and say here we're at the halfway point, listener. Obviously, this is an extra long podcast. So, enjoy. We didn't get to record a bonus podcast earlier this week, so this is your gift.
Here you go.
Happy Halloween.
Yeah, no, I noticed we were running long, but I like these movies so much.
Yeah, it's fine. I would rather talk and give the listener more to listen to. You can come back. YouTube pauses.
Yep. So, my number 5. This movie is one that, if you haven't watched it in a long time, you might think doesn't meet some of the criteria that I mentioned earlier. My number 5 favorite horror movie of all time is A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Thought you were going to say Before Christmas, and I'm like, dude, it doesn't.
Puppets are scary! No, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Because, now I'm a fan of the whole Nightmare on Elm Street series. Literally, the whole one. I like Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Yeah.
Okay? And I'm like the only guy on Earth. But, here's the thing. The later movies in that series aren't horror movies. They're horror comedies. Freddy's the main character. You're rooting for him. The first one isn't. The first one, Freddy's much quieter. He's much more threatening. He's much scarier. He's not making jokes about the power glove and making jokes about, all the stupid, awful bullshit jokes he would throw out throughout the rest of the series, starting with 2, alright? They immediately jumped the rails. And I love those movies for what they are. The first one is a horror movie, and if you haven't watched it for a long time, there is the tendency to try and superimpose that lighter, more comical Freddy onto that first movie. He's not there. He's genuinely scary in the first movie, and that's why I love that movie. Because Robert Englund puts forth a great performance, as does everyone else in the movie, obviously. But that movie also has very mind-bending visuals.
Oh, it does.
Because of the dreamlike nature of things, because of the plot. But it has very mind-bending visuals that will stick with you for a long time. The image of Johnny Depp being sucked into his bed and in the geyser of blood stuck with me for a while. Not in like a scary way, but that image, that'll stick in your brain.
Like I said, of The Hills Have Eyes, some stuff just inspires you. It sticks in your head and makes you want to do stuff like that. Makes you want to see more stuff like that. And I would agree that the original Nightmare on Elm Street had some great imagery.
Nightmare on Elm Street, the original one, along with the original Halloween, not so much the first Friday the 13th, but that's just because that falls a little on the campside for me. Those are what, for me, because I know the twist ending, so I can't unsee it.
I guess.
That's.
I thought it was a good ending. I mean,
It's a good ending. It just doesn't work for me. It doesn't mesh.
Okay.
But the original Halloween, the original Nightmare on Elm Street, they are what a horror, they are what a really good slasher movie should feel like.
Oh yeah, agreed. I mean, they make you care about the characters. The original Halloween was fantastic. I mean, it's just a great film. It deserves all the accolades it gets.
Yep. Well, that's my number 5. You, sir?
My number 5 is kind of a cheat.
Really?
Yeah.
You did a double combo?
Double whammy here.
Yeah. I had one of those on my honorable mentions.
I'm pretty sure it's the same thing.
Nope.
No? Okay. My number 5 is Paranormal Activity and Paranormal Activity 2.
Because they feel like one story.
Well, no. They're the same movie. Just different situations. It's like, okay, like you said, Friday the 13th, Part 2, or not Friday the 13th, excuse me, Nightmare on Elm Street, the second one, is campy. It goes that extra mile. And Friday the 13th, Part 2. It doesn't quite go campy, but it starts to become, it starts to become kind of a joke unto itself. So many other horror series, and even other movie series,
as they start to go on, begin to believe their own gimmick.
And get kind of silly with it, and play with it a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong
with Activity took all the tropes that it did in the first movie, and did them again in the second movie in a slightly different setting.
Yeah, it didn't really camp up until Paranormal Activity 3. And that one is a notable
No,
dip
3 is
in quality.
awful. 4 wasn't bad. I haven't seen the other one.
Isn't 4 just The Omen?
No. I mean, people say that...
They sold it as The Omen.
People say that because there's kids in it, and a creepy, evil little kid is like the villain. If you want to go there.
I haven't seen that movie. I've only got the promotional material to go on.
Well,
They sold that movie as The Omen.
It's like the fucking Village, and I was kind of pissed off.
Yeah, I'm still mad about The Village, by the way. They sold me a werewolf movie. Yeah. Where was my fucking werewolf movie?
I was hoping for a really good werewolf movie. Now, I liked the movie I got, but still, I mean, if I order a steak and you give me a lobster, I'm going to be pissed that I didn't get a steak.
Because alright, if you sold me, creepy, and you may have named it The Village, but you did not sell me creepy village movie. You sold me werewolf movie. Where's my werewolf movie?
But anyway, I really, as much as I want to go on and on and on about what great movies Paranormal Activity 1 and 2 are, we talked about it in the What Makes a Good Scary Movie podcast. The atmosphere, realistic character acting. I love that it kind of lost something in the second movie. But in the first movie, he cast these unknowns. So it really felt like a found footage movie.
In the same way Blair Witch Project originally did.
Yeah.
I saw Blair Witch Project for the first time with a friend of mine, alone, in a movie theater at the age of, 11. People in that theater were going fucking nuts.
Okay. I had Blair Witch Project spoiled for me, before I was old enough to see it.
Poor bastard.
I was sitting in a Wendy's, and the table next to me, it's been long enough, was like, man, I can't believe the end of that movie. Dude's just staring in a corner. What the fuck is that? That's the dumbest shit I ever seen, man. There wasn't even a witch. Oh. Well, now I can't possibly care. No, I've seen it since, and it was a really interesting piece of filmmaking.
But you can't possibly care.
I can't possibly get into it.
That movie's a magic trick, and it doesn't work if you know the ending.
Yeah, that's a great way to fucking put it. Paranormal Activity doesn't have that problem.
Nope. That movie is not. That movie is a movie. It is. You know what's going to happen. It's a haunted house movie.
And I think the second one, the fact that it still delivers using those same tropes without really even tricking you. It's just the same fucking movie again. It's like Mega Man 3 and Mega Man 4. It's the same fucking game. And they're both good. The end.
I do like 2 more than 1.
2 has the dog.
2 has the dog, who is a hero.
And some of the scares are better.
And it has more likable characters.
Yeah. I can't disagree with that. I didn't care so much about the baby. I think that's kind of what turned me off of 2. And the dad, who was just he just didn't want to believe shit. No, I don't care. Stupid. Oh, God!
See, but that's why I like it, because he's not Micah.
No, he's not.
Micah's the least fucking likable character on Earth.
Hey! Satan's here. Let's poke him with a stick.
This should only end well.
Oh, man. But not. Yeah, they're great movies. And if you can manage the shaky cam that happens sometimes... Well, if you can't, watch 2. I mean, there's not as much shaky cam in that one.
Yeah, security cameras. They're locked.
Let's go to your number 4.
My number 4. Ladies and gentlemen, drumroll please. This is the reappearance of Matthew Lillard on this list. 13 Ghosts. I love 13 Ghosts. I did not find this movie scary in the least.
No.
But...
Well, the jump scares were pretty decent.
They were. But this movie fed my imagination in amazing ways. Matthew Lillard plays an amazing character who I have played in role-playing games since I have cribbed from Matthew Lillard's character in that movie because I love that performance. I love Tony Shalhoub.
Oh, in everything ever.
I love the rest of, the Kritikos family, including evil Uncle Kritikos. I like the nanny. She's great. This movie is fun. This movie is still a horror movie, though, because I'm not scared of it, but that doesn't mean that it's not scary. I know people who are fucking terrified of this movie.
Really?
Yeah. Specifically of, 2 of the Black Zodiac scares the fucking bejesus out of a couple people I know. It was the Jackal.
Okay.
And, what was the name of the other one? The other really, really badass looking one.
The
giant
Hammer?
Yeah, the Hammer. The Jackal and the Hammer scare the fuck out of a friend of mine. To this day.
They were awesome effects.
They're awesome. For me, they're awesome effects. They're imaginative effects.
Look, I'm going to let you in on a little, air quotes, secret here. The movie's not on my list, but I fucking love it too. I wrote, so far, 4 books in a series where the sidekick is a psychometric. I mean, come on.
It's just, I love the plot. I love the big glass house.
Have you ever seen a DVD?
Yeah.
So did you watch all the extra scenes?
Yeah, I did.
Oh my god, all the backstory for all the ghosts.
Yeah.
All the shit was put into that.
They put this movie was loved, okay? But I love the set design, the big glass house. The giant ass lament configuration that people are running around in. is just phenomenal looking. It draws you in. It makes the premise interesting. It buys you into the movie. The effects for the Black Zodiac are great. They're imaginative movie monsters. It's as if there were separate horror movies for each individual ghost on that list. And then they made a big mashup combo Avenger-style get-together movie at the very end.
Yeah, that's a great way to put that.
I will totally buy separate movies for each member of the Black Zodiac, okay? I totally will. Make them. I'll buy tickets. But it's such a fun movie. And I know it scares other people, so it still counts. And it has such good horror movie design and good horror movie use of tropes and good horror movie pacing that even though it doesn't scare me personally, I still think it's one of the better horror movies I've seen.
It's phenomenal. Just a fantastic collection of stories wrapped up in a big Avengers get-together. I like that a lot. The original 13 Ghosts, also. Pretty decent movie.
Never seen it.
Oh, no, I think you did. We DVR'd it back when we lived on the...
Yeah, then it totally does not stick in my brain, because I don't remember it at all.
Well, it wasn't anything compared to the remake, but it was pretty cool. I recommend looking it up if you like old 30s horror movies. Actually, I think it might be the 60s. I don't fucking know.
I recommend looking up the new one because Matthew Willard. I recommend watching everything he's in.
Don't watch that baseball movie. It was dumb.
Watch the Matthew Willard part. It's on YouTube.
Well, I suppose that knocks it over to my number 4.
Yes, it does.
Which is apparently some shitty Stephen King movie. I think I told this story on our What Makes a Scary Movie podcast, where I caught the Tommyknockers on TV, and that was the first horror thing I really saw. Scenes from other movies, sure, but like the first horror movie, well, miniseries I ever saw was the Tommyknockers. Watched it on USA under a table in my dad's living room, like 2 a.m, and I loved it. I'd never been exposed to this kind of shit before. I was like 16. I went out the next weekend. I was at my dad's house, went to the video store, rented a movie. I'd heard good things about The Shining.
It's not a bad... It's a really, really good movie. I recognize that on an intellectual level.
Number 4 on my list here. I didn't know it was also Stephen King. It's funny that those are the 2 movies.
That really is funny.
I put it in the machine.
And it's not so much Stephen King.
And again, I will say, with no touch of Tim Burton joking or anything at all, laughed my ass off at this movie. Just so much great
funny.
stuff. It is. It's hilarious. Not in a horror comedy way, but just like, okay, I'm scared of falling. I'm not actually scared of heights. I do get a bit of vertigo, but it's the threat of falling that scares me when I'm up there.
From what I understand, that's the thing for most people.
Right. So I don't like roller coasters. Like, even if you get me on one, and it has happened in the past, it's not like, oh, he's gonna act so scared, it's gonna be so great, he's gonna scream, and no. I cling to whatever security device I have, and go, because I'm actual fact scared. I am D-Club level honesty scared. This adrenaline roller coaster of crazy shit going on.
Absolutely mind-bending shit.
It just spikes all that shit that most people get when they ride a roller coaster. They're like, yeah, I'm gonna die.
I am very happy for you. I wish that I could enjoy this movie.
I wish you could too, because between all of the performances, all 4 of them, unless you really want to count the guys in the beginning.
I don't.
Just fantastic. The writing's really good. The set design is great. Yeah, just, I don't expect a good adaptation out of Kubrick. I don't.
He's not. He makes his movies.
Yeah. Thanks. He'll make his version of the movie, so that's fine. I like It's a Clockwork Orange, for example, but I prefer the book. So, but this film is good. And it stuck with me. I still like throwing it in, and I'll laugh when he goes into the bathroom and he's all like, I'm gonna get me a sexy on with you. It's gonna be a naked lady. Oh, it's a creepy ghost witch. Ew. And then, what's her name? Wendy? Wanda? Whatever the hell her name was, his wife. She's wandering around and she's like, oh, I'm so scared. Guy in a bear dog suit giving a blowjob to some dude. What?
Oh.
They just look at her like, yeah.
That's what's happening here. That's what's going on in this room. You got beef?
Oh, I love it. I mean, shit. It's so classic. I can't even say anything else about it. This is just
you've
straight
probably
up.
seen it. I mean,
This is good.
it's the opposite of an indie movie. You probably have heard of it.
Yeah, it's not like when we did the top 20 and I was like, Moon, and people were like, what?
I still haven't seen that movie.
Oh, you should. It's so good. Like, other people on the internet have caught up to watching Moon. I think, like, Brental Floss the other day tweeted about it, and he was like, dude, Moon is really good. And I'm like, fucking Brent, I know.
Oh, but, those are your thoughts?
That was my number 4, yeah. What the fuck else can I say?
Alright,
Let's hit number 3.
This is a double shot, listener. My number 3 is two things, ironically enough. It is probably the most nostalgia-driven movie on my list, and that is because this is the movie on my list I mentioned that scared the fuck out of me as a kid.
Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day.
No.
Dude, it gets so blustery, though.
Mad blustery, yo. No. And I had to look this up because I wasn't sure which of the movies in the series it was. But my favorite movie in this series of movies, and my third favorite horror movie of all time, Hellraiser 2.
Really, 2?
Not the original Hellraiser. I saw that later. I actually saw 2 first.
That explains so much.
I saw 2 before I saw 1. I saw 1 about a year later because I looked it up.
I'm sorry, listener. We didn't know. I told him my list like some weeks ago, but he forgot.
I made an effort to forget.
And I didn't know. He made this list while I was at work tonight. I knew a couple of things that were on there because, we're frenzies. But Hellraiser 2. Now,
widely regarded as the worst of the 2.
What?
Oh yeah, dude, it's lower on Rotten Tomatoes, it's lower on Metacritic.
Oh, the worst of 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not the worst.
Like, after 3, it's just poop.
Yeah, no.
Poop.
After
3 is kind of shitty anyway, but the rest of it's just crap.
Once there's Hulk Hogan with a camera in his head, it's all downhill from there.
That movie was it started so good too. Like, with the fucking pillar and the crazy dude having all that sex. That could have gone somewhere, and it just went somewhere stupid. It was like fucking Cenobite kaiju invade downtown.
But I looked up, and I've seen 1, 2, 3. I've never seen 4 because it's widely regarded. It's so widely regarded as a shit ass movie. I just never tried. But yeah, no, I saw Hellraiser 2 first, and this was when I was a little kid. I saw Hellraiser when I was maybe 7.
Is 4 the one where they try to humanize him?
I don't even remember. No, they reveal his human origins in 2.
Yeah, but like 4 is the one where they're like, he's a good guy now.
Yeah, look, I don't even know.
So fucking dumb. It's
still
not as bad as Hellraiser in space, and I loved Jason X.
Yeah, Jason X was
hell.
Jason X was loved where it was. It was a glorious send up. Hellraiser in space was like Leprechaun in space. What the fuck
it was boring as hell. You don't start a Hellraiser movie with like page 275 of Dune starring actors you've never heard of who aren't Kyle MacLachlan.
Oh. I'm sorry, that was too funny. I gotta get down to the taste. Again, this movie, I can watch it, I enjoy it, it's great, it's a fun time. When I was a fucking kid, this movie messed me up. This movie scared the shit out of me.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's got all the stuff from Nightmare on Elm Street with like the dream world and all that shit.
All the, very scary, very graphic imagery, that sort of thing. But by God, I love it. I loved it then. It was the exact kind of dread-filled, what am I watching? I know I probably am not allowed to watch this. Yes, even I, with the very liberal childhood I had, probably would have been in trouble if they had known I was watching Hellraiser. But it was transgressive, and it was violent, and it was scary, and Pinhead was scary. Even though throughout the movie they revealed his human origins, what he was, how he became what he is, all that stuff, he's scary. The rest of the Cenobites are scary.
Dude, I always thought the Doctor was scarier.
The Doctor is scary.
Because you got fucking giant scorpion needle tail thing he's got, and he's just a fucked up human being anyway. That's what I liked about the first one, is that Pinhead isn't the villain. He's a MacGuffin.
Yeah, he's the cosmic vengeance of the Lament configuration. He's not even really a villain in 2.
No.
He starts being the villain in 3.
He's a force of nature.
There's a great moment. I believe this happens in 2. Again, I haven't actually seen these movies in years. Very nostalgia driven. I just love them. But the psychiatrist, the memory services psychiatrist in this movie, who's obsessed with the Lament configuration, gives the box to someone else to open, because he knows that whoever opens the box is the one who gets, dragged in. The Cenobites show up, and then they leave that person alone because they know that they were forced to open the box.
Well, yeah, that establishes that.
And they go after the person who forced them. That is great. It paints the characters, it paints the Cenobites as they're monsters, but they're not, how to put this, they're not malevolent. They are what they are. They're violence. I love the character design. I mean, it's iconic. Everybody loves the character design of those movies.
Geiger can do very little wrong. Could.
Right?
Could. Excuse me.
And I like the story, as convoluted and weird and Clive Barkery as it is. And this movie makes me feel positive about my childhood. Because it was the kind of scare that makes you enjoy the rest of your life more.
I agree. I liked the first one better, but I liked the second one a lot too. It gave me a lot of hope for the third one that was really dashed.
That was dashed immediately.
Like, anytime people talk to me about, Hellraiser, about it as a franchise, I'm like, oh yeah, watch the first two, and then stop. Because it's not worth your time.
Yeah, don't watch the third one.
Like, the third one, it was more like, man, you just sent me up. I can't believe that. I called that a Geiger thing, and you're right, he had nothing to do with it. Oh, man. I had to check that. I was like, what? Was my fact brain wrong? And it was. And I have to admit that on the air to the listener.
Told you.
No, I knew it was Clive Barker as, like, the design stuff originally, like his brain, where all the scary things live. But I thought Geiger had something to do with the creature designs as well. But no, just 100% Clive Barker. So, 2 reminds me, rather, his game Jericho reminded me a lot of 2.
Yeah, Jericho does remind you a lot of 2. It's a very similar sort of feel.
But I like that 2 is kind of like the Through the Looking Glass, in terms of Alice in Wonderland, literally.
Yeah.
3.
Hellraiser, the first one is probably a better movie. I just don't have the same connection.
Sure, no, and that's why this is a favorites list and not a best movie ever list. The comment I wanted to make about 3 is it feels like The Howling, but instead of werewolves, Cenobites.
Yeah, that seems accurate.
Like, I wonder if they had overlap in teams. I wouldn't doubt it, but man, humbling me. Look at you. I'm a proud papa.
Don't step to me about Hellraiser.
No,
I know my shit in regards to that movie.
You're right, and you were real classy about correcting me on it. I appreciate that. Listener, this is a classy guy.
No, I'm really not.
What you should do is you should buy Cole Regan books and give our video likes and be like, hey, I don't want Eric J. Chucky's signature in my Cole Regan book. You give me The Boy.
I'll sign your book, whatever.
And because he's a classy guy. Buy 2 books. I'll sign one. He'll sign the other one.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great plan.
I'm just being.
Should I get you a Jay Sherman standee?
No, I want one. I remember for a while I had on my phone.
Yeah.
I don't remember what tone it was, but buy my book. I don't pimp it enough. I really should do it more, but whatever. My number 3 movie is another remake. That is the 1990 Greg Nicotero Night of the Living Dead.
Really?
Oh God, yeah.
Over like the original Dawn of the Dead, over all over the Romero, really?
Well, I mean, Nicotero was there from the beginning, but his vision here, the story that was told here. Let me start over again in a way that's going to get this out quicker. The original Night of the Living Dead is a fucking amazing piece of filmmaking. I'm not even going to say for its time. It's just also slow.
Yeah, the pacing's a little weird.
And not to sound political, but Barbara's character in the original is worthless.
That's not political. That's just not liking useless characters.
Well, you know, it is actually political for me, because I saw this when I was younger, and I really liked that this was a movie from the very early 90s, 1990, where a woman and a black guy are the protagonists, and they both kick ass.
They do both kick ass in that movie.
I'm all for diversification. I mean, you know that from our superhero, what would be a good superhero movie podcast.
Yeah, I will still pay a large amount of money. Get me a Luke Cage movie. I know he's getting a Netflix series. I'll have to content myself with that. Maybe you could give me Black Panther?
Oh God, so much money. But I just, like, my young mind who has never really been one of those, racist kind of people, even accidentally.
Just reminded me of that song.
Yes, well, there's layers of jokes in there. I was trying to keep it quiet, but I was so impressed by that. And then to find out that, back in the day, the black guy was still the hero, but, Barbara didn't have that strong of a part. And I really liked her. She had that Ripley-esque kind of badass chick. After she goes to her dark place and is like, oh God, everything is fucked. No, she comes out of it. She's like, all right, everything's fucked. Then I am also going to fuck everything.
For me, that's just not liking useless characters.
And that's probably a part of it, in general. But I was impressed that filmmakers did that. But that's not why I like the movie. That just happens to be part of the reason I like it more than the 60s one. The most of the reason is the fact that the original is slow. So slow. The 90s one is punchier. It gets to where it needs to be faster. And it's not a ridiculously fun send-up like the 2011 one with Sid Haig.
And it's not a really bleak, sad remake, not like the Dawn of the Dead remake, which I love, don't get me wrong. But it doesn't have that. It feels more in line with the emotional center of the first Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah. The Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, the originals, I also really like. I like the remake of Dawn of the Dead as well, but it's a different place.
It's a different movie, okay?
It's so fucking different. God, I could talk for hours on the symbolism and the story and the character development of Romero's Golden Trilogy and the 1990 movie that I like better than the original. But we're here to talk about the 1990 Night of the Living Dead. Awesome zombies. Lots of great shot-for-shot style remakes. Scene remakes. The legendary, "They're coming to get you, Barbara." You know, the quotes. That movie's so fucking quotable. A good horror movie where you're having fun and not just being scared needs to be quotable.
Yeah. Because you want to be able to walk out of the theater and bandy those lines about with your friends for a couple days.
Yeah, or when things get creepy, what do you do to disperse the tension? Yeah, you cut off a
You
song
cut
like
off,
that.
yeah. You shoot out a "Do you like scary movies" or something like that. Something to just crack the tension a little bit.
Acting was phenomenal. I loved the zombies, you know, it was punchier, it was faster, it was more dramatic, I think, and it fit the decade, at the time more. I'm a child of the 90s. It's not to say I can't appreciate stuff like, you know, the original White Zombie or Dario Argento movie, but I appreciate it for different reasons. I love Suspiria's atmosphere. I think it's really interesting. And I love how, although he wouldn't put it that way, I love how Rob Zombie applied it to Lords of Salem. But I don't think that makes a really great, scary movie necessarily. Here, they modernized things like they did with a lot of the other remakes on my list. They took a great idea and they put spit and polish on it.
My number 2 is a remake! First remake, I think,
Second.
on this.
13 Ghosts is
Technically a remake. I don't think of it as one.
It is.
But yeah, it is a remake. It is the 2005 version of the Amityville Horror.
Oh yeah, good film.
I talked about this on What Makes a Good Horror Movie, but none of you watched it, so I'm gonna keep making jokes like that.
I like how we're becoming the sad Jewish mother of internet podcasts.
Why don't you watch the podcast? We work on them. They're nice.
You're
you
looking thinless,
them.
and I made you some bagels with schmear. Eat up.
Anyway,
I love the Jewish people dearly. I am being playful.
I was doing Adam Sandler's lady voice from Crazy Nights because I think that's a
Who was it that I realized sounded like Whitey and ruined for you forever?
Oh God, I don't remember, but you did.
It was like someone from a scary movie or something.
That he pointed out sounds almost exactly like Whitey from 8 Crazy Nights, and now I can't take that seriously anymore.
Oh,
I can't.
I wish I could remember what it was. Oh well, carry on. The Amityville Horror.
The Amityville Horror. Look, we paid dues on this podcast to talk about how the classic movies are great. We like the remake because they modernize things and make them more fit to the mindset that we grew up with, all that sort of thing. This is not that case. I do not like the original Amityville Horror. I think it is boring and not very well made.
The original Amityville Horror worked because people thought it was real.
Oh, that would explain it.
The characters in The Conjuring, the ghost hunters.
Yeah.
Okay, those are real people.
Yeah.
Most of the world, it's pretty divided. You either see them as nice people who are trying to help with hauntings, or fucking shysters who are trying to steal all the money ever. I think it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Why can't they be nice people who want all the money ever?
Yeah, but at that point, when that movie came out, they had, for whatever reason, created enough buzz about this case that people went to see this movie under the understanding that it was based on a true story kind of thing.
Right.
And this is the account of the haunting. And in that regard, the original movie is very scary. And it's as good as any other fucking horror movie from that era.
I don't agree.
But it's the same kind of thing as Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
See, that's the thing. I like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I do too, it's hilarious.
I don't like the original Amityville Horror. It doesn't, for whatever reason.
I will tell you, yeah, it's boring.
It's
boring. Comparatively
it's
speaking...
boring, the pacing is bad, and the acting is terrible.
Oh my god, like the fucking, between the second and third acts in the original Amityville Horror, everything just grinds to a halt. And they stop while the main character goes to the bathroom for a few hours. I mean, it's just... Bleh.
It's not, look, but this isn't talking about bad movies, it's talking about good movies, but I wanted to bring up that for contrast. Because, for me, the remake of the Amityville Horror is probably the quintessential haunted house movie. when I watch a haunted house movie, that's the bar I'm measuring against. I love the characters in that movie. They are relatable. They are fun. They are nice people, and they're not too stupid. Because there's a line. There's stupid, and then there's too stupid. I like the story of the haunting. I like the set design of the house. It looks appropriately creepy. Everything down to the score, as far as my memory serves.
Oh yeah, the score is very good. I believe Tyler Bates. Let me check on that while you talk.
But that when I watch any haunted house movie, any of the ones I watched recently at all, even stuff that twist ending ends up not being about the house being haunted, but rather people being haunted. Insidious, The Conjuring, both. The Conjuring, based on work by these same people, from what I understand.
Yep.
Insidious Chapter 2.
And Lorraine Warren, that just came back to me.
In a smaller way, the Paranormal Activity movies, I measure them on different things because they're a different style of movie. Haunting in Connecticut, all of this stuff, I measure against the bar of the 2005 Amityville Horror. I think that The Others is another one that I measure.
Yeah, Others is not a bad movie.
It does not measure up to that bar. Not a bad movie.
No, I'm sorry. That was Steve Jablonsky. He's a Platinum Dunes staple. He did some stuff for Metal Gear Solid 2, WrestleMania themes. He's good. Not as well known as Tyler Bates, but he's very good.
It has the right pacing for a haunted house movie. It has the right level of escalation for a haunted house movie. And it doesn't have extraneous information, which is a big problem in haunted house movies. It doesn't load you down with unnecessary information. And that's one of the several reasons I love it. Another big reason I love it is obviously Ryan Reynolds' performance, because I like that actor. But honestly, in this, that's not the biggest reason. It's the rest of the movie that they have around him that I like more, to be honest. But yeah, it's, for me, the quintessential haunted house movie.
Nice.
The haunted house movie that I am thinking of when you tell me you have a haunted house movie you want me to watch. You, sir?
Cool. I need to stress, listener, you know me. We've been together for a long, long time now. This is my number 2 favorite horror movie of all time. House of a Thousand Corpses.
Number 2, really?
Number 2. I don't always like the bleakness, which is weird because I am that down to my very soul, no matter what I'm wearing, I am that goth kid I was in high school. I like when things are darker. It pleases me. But as a person, I like to make jokes. I use humor as a defense mechanism. I use humor as a way to relate to people.
Let's be honest, humor is the official defense mechanism of the 2 Nerds podcast.
Yeah, I feel comfortable in endorsing that. So I also like that tongue-in-cheekness that comes with a lot of horror movies, like Critters or Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And, much like yourself have stated several times, I love characters. My favorite directors write movies about characters.
Same, really.
Well, directors write movies. 1,000 writers out there just went, "Urgh!"
And you're a writer.
And I'm a writer. But my favorite directors make movies where characters are written.
My favorite writers write books about characters. They write scripts about characters, if you want to go that way. It's my favorite, most anything is characters.
Yeah, character-driven stuff. I really dig it. Everything that my number 9 movie, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, brought to the table, vis-a-vis Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was such a good movie. Such an important horror film.
Yeah.
Like, there's not a better way to say that. Is it the most important horror film of all time?
Probably not.
No, that would probably go to Halloween. But it's up there. It's like number 2, number 3. Okay? Everything that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake did to make the Texas Chainsaw Massacre just plain scary, House of Thousand Corpses did to take everything that Chainsaw was and bring it to life in the modern era. From the weird-ass colors used, from the interesting shots and art style, to the fucking characters.
Yeah, the 2004 remake or 2003 remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a good movie.
And it has good characters.
But it's different in spirit. It
Yes.
doesn't have the spirit of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It has the characters, it has the setup. It doesn't have the spirit. Because the spiritual successor to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is House of a Thousand Corpses.
When I saw the movie in theaters the first time, and this was back when I wasn't quite as wired into the internet as I am now, I was like, this is just Chainsaw again. Phenomenal. But this is just Chainsaw again. And I loved it. And then Rob Zombie even said later, I believe in the commentary or at some point, he was just like, we wanted to do a Tobe Hooper film. We wanted to do Chainsaw. Well, I wanted to do Chainsaw. And he pulled it off with aplomb. He had scary bad guys. He had amazing performances. He took risks in the cinematography. That hold on that gunshot, where Otis has the cop dad, and he waits until the music fades, he waits a little longer, and then he waits just long enough that you think the movie has skipped or something.
Just long enough that you go, guys?
And then bam. I mean, just fantastic. It's campy. It's got some good gore, some good gross out moments. Phenomenal characters. Light on the jump scares, which I appreciate. They have their place, and it wasn't here.
That's not what the movie's for.
No. And it says something that these characters are so iconic in horror, and they are so recent. You have a few standouts. Ghostface, is not quite as recent, but, Jigsaw.
Billy more so.
But you do have those standouts that have made their name in horror as iconic characters. But House of Thousand Corpses came along and gave us Captain Spaulding. I've seen this movie before. Otis Driftwood, and to a lesser extent, Baby.
Baby Doll isn't necessarily iconic. Her laugh is.
Yeah.
Because that shit is fucking scary.
It's time for me to put my dick on the table. Baby Doll's a Batman villain. Baby's actual name is Angel Baby.
See, when I did it, it was classy.
That's the difference.
I did it classy. You were like, no, you are wrong. I am better than you.
No, I believe this shit. For example, Captain Spaulding, his real last name is Cutting.
I know that because you told me.
Yeah.
Otis Driftwood is a Groucho character.
Yeah, well, they're all named after
Groucho
characters.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I got that wrong. I think Cutter was his nickname when he was killing people. But I digress because I'm fanboying out and it's late at night and we still have a number one to get to for each of us. But there are so many movies that we went through, trying to get this wheedled down. I mean, my list, I literally had like every movie I've ever seen that I went, yeah, that's great, on my list at some point.
Same here.
I cut it down to about 30 and then chop from there.
I got mine down to 25 and then had to start the chopping process.
No particular order, rapid fire succession, back and forth, go.
I'll work up then. Dawn of the Dead.
The original?
2004.
2004, yeah, good flick. Joyride.
28 Days Later.
I've got the entire Tremors series, near and dear to my heart. Super special honorable mention.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 2003.
Nice. I had Event Horizon, great film.
The Conjuring.
John Carpenter's Vampires, not overrated enough.
Insidious and Insidious Chapter 2 together is the only way they get on the list because they're the same story. They are all one big movie.
That's good. Shadow of the Vampire, phenomenal film.
You don't disagree there. Saw.
This is where I had my 13 Ghost.
Cabin Fever.
Cabin Fever's a great film. The Forsaken, another great underrated vampire movie.
Jeepers Creepers.
Not a big fan of that myself.
I just love the characters in it, and I love that song.
I like Jeepers Creepers too.
See, I don't like that one much.
Yeah, okay. I had Hot Tension.
From Hell.
From Hell's a good film. I don't know that I'd count that as horror.
IMDb does, so I saw fit to put it on the list because I like it a lot.
Yeah, it is a good film. This isn't really a horror film either, so Dog Soldiers.
Yeah, no, that's an army film.
Yeah, but it's fucking fantastic, and there are werewolves in it.
And Evil Dead Part 2.
Speaking of werewolves, Ginger Snaps.
Nice. That's all I have on my list here. But I have a couple more honorable mentions that I can go from memory if you want.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Blank, go ahead and do a couple more.
I got Cabin Fever.
Yep.
The Last Exorcism.
See, that was I had it on there and then I just took it off.
You know, if it weren't for the last 5 minutes of either of those movies, but if it weren't for the last 5 minutes of the first one, damn fine.
For the last 5 minutes of the second one, damn decent, okay, maybe not.
Yeah, The Last Exorcism was good. The second one was could have gone somewhere.
Not bad unless you watch the last 35 seconds.
Yeah,
terrible. House of a Thousand Corpses, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. I had Hostel and The Conjuring. Behind the Mask, The Rise and Fall of Leslie Burns.
See, I counted that as a comedy.
I don't. I think it's a slasher, but it's a good slasher.
Yeah, it is a dyed-in-the-wool slasher movie.
These three, I didn't put in an actual order, but these were 11, 12, and 13. Okay? The original Dawn of the Dead. It's just a fucking fantastic movie. Day of the Dead's good too, but it drags. Jaws. I am stunned that Jaws didn't make the top 10, but there's just so many movies I find more aesthetically pleasing. And another duo, because they're so fucking similar, The Grudge and The Ring. For years, The Grudge noise. I finally got over it, but for years, that noise inspired terror within me. And The Ring is just a fantastic made movie. Lots of great artistic decisions in it, and some dumb ones too. So
that's my honorable mentions.
All right, yeah, that's my honorable mentions too. We got that out there. We love good movies.
Because who doesn't?
Yeah. Well, okay. Number one. Let's go. Let's stop giving false information about H.R. Geiger and Baby Doll and cutting.
And just get
to the meat, the end.
My favorite horror movie of all time is Seven.
Now, I don't necessarily count that as a horror movie, but I can see why you would.
I count it as a horror movie because while there are police in it, the movie isn't about them. The movie's about Kevin Spacey.
Yeah.
About Kevin Spacey doing what a Kevin Spacey do.
Things.
And it's about the setups. It is more tasteful Gorn before Gorn was a thing.
Yeah. And it's got, again, such great characters.
Yeah, great characters. Morgan Freeman, Brad Pitt, both do command performances. Kevin Spacey's obviously amazing.
He is amazing in his lack of a presence.
Yes, that's the whole purpose of the character.
So perfect, yeah. You have those strong and I don't really want to use the word tropes. It's sort of accurate, but it's not quite what I mean. But you have those strong staples of horror tropes. I think that's a better way to put it. Especially when you're doing a theme. You know, the Black Zodiac or the Zodiac is a good one. You know, another popular one, Suits of Cards. You know, Suits of Tarot Cards. And the Seven Deadly Sins. Awesome stuff that gets revisited time and time again, and I will say, I'm sure you would agree, since this is your favorite horror movie, this movie does it the best.
Yeah, that's a no contest for me. It's the Seven Deadly Sins. People keep coming back to it because it's so deeply ingrained in our culture, American culture specifically. I'm not culturally aware enough to speak about other cultures around the world, but in American culture specifically, those things are ingrained in our culture as bad, as other, as things you do not want to be. So it lends the killer in this movie an air of, I won't go so far as to say righteousness, but believability. That someone would go this far off the rails about these concepts. And I love that. And it has, again, amazing imagery. The gluttony scene is the one I'm specifically talking about. That fucking scene stuck with me. That fucking scene, that room, the gluttony sin room, is perfect horror movie design.
See, I thought that was really gross. I liked Sloth.
Sloth is also good.
Yeah, Sloth was good for me.
And it's just, it is a great movie. And it is a contained movie. Because there's a lot of movies on this list that rely upon their viewer for certain things. Either a slightly expanded, suspension of disbelief, or a general sense of paranoia about one thing or another, about, old creepy houses, or about walking alone late at night, or a lot of horror movies draw upon internal fears that we have and use them to their advantage, to tweak that knob to get the visceral reaction we're looking for. And this is probably why you wouldn't count Seven as a horror movie. Seven doesn't really do that. It just presents to you this terrible fucking series of events.
Yeah.
That's going to happen, and there's a sense of inevitability to it.
It's really hard. There's a really hard line. I mean, the easy line is a horror movie has some sort of science fiction or supernatural element. But that's not always the case. It does not have to be the case. The original Friday the 13th, I think, is a horror movie, even though until the ending stinger, there's no supernatural element to it.
Scream's a horror movie, and it doesn't have any sci-fi or supernatural elements to it.
I think the difference is in tone. To me, Seven is a thriller. Another movie that's very similar, that one could definitely construe as a horror movie, is the Game. The Douglas, I was going to say. Michael Douglas in The Game. Fucking psychologically terrifying. I mean, if you are a paranoid person in the least, if you have questions about others' motivations, you watch this movie and suddenly you're like, oh God, nothing I know is anything. But to me, it airs far enough on the side of thriller in tone. And Seven as well. Very close to that line. Closer than The Game, I would say. Because of those graphic, horrific scenes. But so much of the film is less about showing the horror and more about the chase. About solving the crime. I think, and it sits there. I mean, if someone's going to be Humpty Dumpty in this situation and be on that fence, I'd say Seven is the guy who's riding that line.
I agree with you. For me, it happens to fall on one side of the line. It's close.
Glass half full, glass half empty.
Yeah, I would qualify it as a horror thriller. You would qualify it as a thriller with horror.
Yeah, and that's I can't take that away from you. I'm not.
That's chocolate my peanut butter. Right there. That's
precisely. And I think it's an excellent thing at the top of the list. Yeah, a movie I didn't like when I first saw it.
Really? Why not?
I watched it on USA.
Oh, yeah, that'll do it.
Now, most of the time, it's okay. You lose some jokes or whatever, but... for those of you who haven't seen it on USA, the ending scene, the what's in the box, is instead of him saying, oh, what the fuck, oh, shit, whatever, all the stuff Brad Pitt says, they just repeat him going, oh, man, oh, man, oh, man.
And then, of course, some of the lines get cut too, like, what's in the box, what's in the box, what's in the fucking box. They take out the fucking. So it just loses punch.
It arms.
It's an important fucking, okay?
Yeah. Have you seen the DVD footage for that as well?
No,
the alternate endings?
I've never seen that anything but like...
They never taped anything, but there's a couple of decent ideas as what could have happened there. I recommend looking them up at some point.
I'm going to.
They're interesting.
I've only ever seen that movie on like HBO or Showtime or whatever, so I am totally going to...
I think we have it on DVD.
I will totally look that shit up. I am very interested. It's my favorite horror movie.
Yeah. Time to get to my number one.
I bet you I can guess what it is. I haven't looked, but I bet you I can guess based on what you haven't said yet.
Here's a small teaser. It's been mentioned already. Creating suspense for the 12 seconds before I reveal what it is.
You're really actually, gonna wait 12 seconds?
No, let's go a little bit longer here. Like I said earlier in the podcast and previously, listener, I didn't get into horror until I was about 15, 16 years old. I just had kind of a sheltered childhood. It happened. And my good friend John, if you're listening, buddy, hey, how's it going? Introduced me to a little movie that we watched on low volume. This is a thing we did in the living room, so we wouldn't bother my stepdad who was sleeping there. We watched movies that he brought over, bootlegged off his VHS, and we watched them on really low volume so we wouldn't bother him, and huddled around the TV. Like, I don't know, kids in a fucking movie, except we were teenagers. So, he brought over Army of Darkness. And it was a fun trip. But obviously the opening of Army of Darkness, you go, well, what happens here? There was other stuff before this, right? And he's like, oh yeah, totally. Evil Dead 1 and then Evil Dead 2 and then Army of Darkness. So we did some looking around the video stores. We saw Evil Dead 1. And Evil Dead 1's a great film. Most of the imagery, most of the special effects are dated. But it's still a really great film. Really great story, fun acting. Perfect example of an 80s horror film. And it wasn't a while longer before I finally managed to track down a copy of Evil Dead 2. And that is my favorite movie, my favorite horror movie, I should say, of all time. Because...
I was right.
It balances. I mean, I hate... Part of me hates to say that, because it's like... It's as trite and, oh, I see, as saying Deadpool is your favorite superhero, or whatever. You're just the cool kid. You like the Bruce Campbell chin and schluck on it all day. And he's an amazing individual. I love Boa Hotep, for example. But, I like Evil Dead 2 because of what it is, not because of who's in it. And I don't know that anybody else but Bruce Campbell could have given that performance. There's a reason he is who he is now, and it's Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
It's a movie that fixes everything that was wrong with the first one. And doesn't try to take itself too seriously. There's a kind of manic, almost hilarious tension through the whole film. Like, it is that bleakness, that everything is fucked. There is no way to make it out of this alive or well or safe kind of bleakness. And things only get fucking batshit crazier from there. To the point that, so long as you have that suspension of disbelief, so long as you are watching your movie and you're not doing something else or fucking being cynical, once it gets to the point where Ash fucking breaks, and the entire house is literally laughing at him, and he just starts laughing along too. That scene, I have never seen a series of images and sounds in a film that better conveyed what it feels like to lose your fucking mind. And I have had unique experiences. Perhaps not so unique, but I have had experiences in which my widow brain just snapped. And that's it. It's that we are at the bottom. There is no rope. There's not even Ted Levine up there doing the tuck move and telling us to lotion ourselves. Hope is dead, and they're all laughing at me. Well then, I'll laugh too. And Bruce Campbell portrays it perfectly. And this is like 2 minutes in a fucking 90-minute movie, which is just great horror, great ideas, all committed to celluloid.
I can't disagree with anything you just said.
and you know, it has all the things I was talking about before. The atmosphere is incredible. The effects are really great for their time. They hold up well enough today. Bruce Campbell's acting is phenomenal. The girl they got to act is much better than anybody in the first movie. The ideas, you know, the cool notions that were presented that made all the other movies on the list good in the first place. And ironically, like the rest of my fucking list is a remake. Everybody shits on remakes all the time, man.
Nothing wrong with making a good idea better.
Yeah, you know.
Or at least making a good idea again.
Sometimes it's like you put it. You know, you get that mean nerd on, and the nerd conflicts with the buff, and the nerd wins, because he's bigger, and he's stronger, and he's meaner.
He's madder. And that's not the way you want to be. Like, don't shit on the remake.
Because it's a remake. If it's worse, then fine.
I'm, in this situation, me in The Shining, I'm Donnie Don't. Don't do what Donnie Don't does. Don't be me in The Shining. I can't stop myself. My brain doesn't let me stop myself with that movie. But if you have a choice, don't do that. Don't shit on the movie for being different than the thing that inspired it. If you have to shit on the movie, shit on it on its own merits. Because at least then, you're being honest.
Yeah. And you know what? If you fucking hate every movie I've named, first of all, why are we friends? Secondly, I mean, it's like, really, what fucking horror movies are left? What are you out there liking? I mean, is it really just the slashers?
Do you like the Phantasm movies a lot?
I love the Phantasm movies. Why didn't I mention them? They're not in my top 10, but they're still really good. It's a lot of fun, too. But, you know, if you don't like them, fine. This is my opinion. I feel like my opinion is very well founded and well researched. I've seen a lot of fucking horror movies.
I feel like my opinion is less well researched. I haven't seen as many as him. And something I found out about myself when making this list, I love horror movies. I do. I don't consume them as deeply as other media. Horror movies are much more likely to be seen and then just skate on by my perception. The ones on this list are the ones that stuck. I have probably seen a lot more horror movies than I remember, but a lot of them just don't stick. They don't stay with me in the same way a good action movie or a good comedy or a good drama is gonna. I don't know why. I'd love to think about it and find out. I think I'll try, but it's, for me, people talk about how action movies are just popcorn flicks. They're just, they're there, they happen, they're gone. You don't really, it's not, turn off your brain and have a good time. There are great horror movies that aren't like that for me, but for me, a lot of horror movies are like that. They're fun. Do them, have a good time, now you're done with them.
Well, I think a lot of people are like that, and I think your comparison to action movies is actually rather apt, if you don't mind my analysis here on the air. You like action movies and their plots. You get really into them.
Yeah, I love action movies.
I don't have that.
I love schlocky, shitty action movies. I will not apologize for that. I rock that shit. I love terrible Jason Statham action movies.
I adore schlocky, shitty horror movies. There's a different level of bad. There's such a thing as a bad. Wrong Turn, for example.
Bad?
Shit. My wife loves it. I fucking hate the first one. The second one was not as bad, but it was not much better.
Yeah, you only hate the first one, and Brandon and I both love it. For me, it's that popcorn. It's, oh yeah, it's a good movie. I don't care. It's that, how most people view a shitty action movie. That was fun. I'm done with it. But we grew up in Eastern Kentucky, so this is absurdly funny for us.
Well, yeah, I guess. For me, it's just asinine crap. It's not scary. These characters are dumb. Yeah, this speaks more to my... When we cut down to it, you're kind of a guy's guy. When we cut down to it, giggle all you like.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's very funny.
You like explosion.
I like explosions.
You like, fuck yeah, action.
Yeah. Punching a guy in the face looks pretty cool.
Not
as fun as you might think.
You thrive on the witty one-liners and the big guns and the bigger booms and probably a really weird sex scene.
I could take or leave those.
Did I just describe Bullet to the Head?
I think you did.
I really like that movie.
I really like that movie too. But it's all genres of action movies and suspense movies less so, and it's honestly probably my second favorite genre.
Horror movies are they my favorite genre of movie? Comic book has become...
Yeah, that's my favorite genre of movie. Comic book movies.
Horror movies might be my favorite genre, but I think it's so much easier to fuck up a horror movie.
Yeah.
Like, we've understood how to not fuck up a comic book movie in the last 20 years. We've got that formula and people are using it.
Which is very good of them. Thank you.
But fucking up a horror movie is too damn easy because they're cheap to make. You don't have to try that hard.
If you don't try hard enough, it's not going to be scary.
But much like we talk about with video games sometimes, how the RPG and the RPG element, the traditional JRPG has disappeared, but RPG elements have infested rather delightfully in shooters, in action games, in all this other shit.
Elements.
Yeah, these elements, these RPG elements. So too, in everything I enjoy, there is an element of horror.
Yeah, I get it.
And, whereas it's very telling that your number one horror movie is something that's so close to being a suspense movie. Suspense is the mature older brother of action.
Yeah, Heat is a great movie, for instance.
Yeah. My number one horror movie is, what I think exemplifies the horror genre.
Yeah, the horror genre distilled.
It is the entire oeuvre crammed into 90
Notably,
minutes.
that shit made it to my honorable mentions. It's a good movie. I like it. I do. Not my top 10.
I love how different our lists are.
Which is good, because our top 10 regular movies lists are fairly similar.
Very fucking similar. It's going to be a much shorter podcast. But Brandy's going to be there, so.
She'll pan it out for us. That's nice.
Well, in either case, I hope you'd enjoyed us talking so far.
I hope you'd enjoyed it as well.
Man, I want to go back and edit in a disclaimer at the beginning, and it's fucking, it was 3 in the morning, now it's fucking 5 in the morning. I've had a hard day, you've had a hard day. I feel so stupid for the stupid shit I've said throughout, the wrong facts I have pulled out of my ass. The mouth words I have failed to mouth word.
No, it makes it better. Listener will get a lot of enjoyment out of it. So, listener, this was a long one.
I'd probably cut this into 2 parts. You're probably listening to part 2. I don't hate you that much, listener.
That's all editing side. I don't care. Either way, 1 part or 2. This was a long journey to get from 10 to 1. Because we're fucking talkative people. But in the end, that's why you're here. Because everything's better when nerds talk about it.